So we also ask that you bring what you learn from this training with you and beyond. So with that, you can go to the next slide. And we'll just quickly review the agenda, giving folks a little bit of an overview of what to expect to getting out of today's training. So, and as people continue to trickle in, please use the chat to introduce yourself. You can tell us where you're joining from, your name, if you have an affiliation with the League or State Voices or Center for Popular Democracy. It'd be great to hear. I'm also noticing some names that I recognize from last call, so welcome back. But brief overview of the agenda. We are going to first talk a little bit about the connection between organizing conversations and in the context of redistricting and why we have these organizing conversations. Ria and Julia will take us through the components of having organizing conversations. You all will get the chance to practice. There'll be times for questions and answers, and then check in for we begin and send you on your way to host your. Welcome, Amy from Fresno. We can go to the next slide. So I'm still seeing the agenda slide, but oh, here we go. Yeah, thank you. Before we dive deeper into the actual content and the meat of this training, we wanted to acknowledge that today is the birthday of Governor Elbridge Gerry. For those of you who may not know, but I would guess, venture to guess that this is a familiar name and image to folks on this particular call, given the subject that we're covering. But Governor Elbridge Gerry served as governor of Massachusetts. And while he was not the first to approve or participate in the manipulation of community district lines, he did become the namesake after approving lines which mimicked something that represented a salamander. So Gerry plus salamander gave us gerrymander. And I want to be clear that it's really not necessarily about the shape that makes this practice troublesome and noteworthy, but it's really the intention behind it. Gerrymandering is the manipulation of the community districting process by those in political power to keep or change political power. And he and politicians like him get away with this type of manipulation of maps, especially when the process is kept behind closed doors and when people's voices are not part of the process. And it's really only fitting that we are convening on this day to build our own power as people and a people-led effort to use our relationships, our skills, our organizing to fight against this manipulation of community districting by creating pathways for people's voices to be heard and bringing more people into this work with us by having these entry points and organizing conversations. So I wouldn't say that I'm wishing him a happy birthday, but wanted to note that this is the day that it is. And given that, I know that we have folks, I see people from Ohio, North Carolina, Jackson, Mississippi, Queens, New York. Thank you so much. We all are bringing different experiences. We do want to hear from you. I'll be dropping a link in the chat for you to fill out, for you to really tell us how you would rate your level of experience with organizing conversations about redistricting. So you can see the link in the chat function right now. If you click on that chat, it will bring you to a survey. You can rate what is your level of experience with these organizing conversations. Do you have extensive experience with organizing conversations about redistricting? Do you have moderate experience with redistricting, with organizing conversations about redistricting? Or maybe you never had an organizing conversation about redistricting. So once you can fill it out and hit submit, and then we'll see your responses on the screen that's being shared, so we can kind of get a gauge of where folks are coming from. Okay.
So the way that it works is you have to go to menti.com. And when you go to menti.com, you're going to type in the code. Let me see. 69328430. Can you, if you can add that into the chat. So go to menti.com and use the code 69328430.
Enter code 69328430.
Yep. Let me share a different screen real quick. Not the right screen. Sorry about that. There we go.
If it's easier for this one, we do have polls within the Zoom that I could initiate.
Yeah. Why don't you try that right now,
Yeah.
and then I'll add it in. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm going to launch a poll. It asks the question, how would you rate your level of experience with organizing conversations? You know, just in general, are you an expert? You have them all the time. Meh, like you've done some, but you have some learning to do. So I'm seeing that we've had about half the folks, a little bit over half the folks answer. And I'll keep it open for a second. Thank you all. I think everybody has responded. So we have a range. Most of you are in the meh. You know, you've done it some, but you're still learning. We have a total newbie, welcome. This is a great place for you to be. And we also have expert, thank you all. You know, I think it's great to have this mix and range of experience. And then we also, in terms of organizing and organizing conversations as they relate to redistricting, we know that some of you have done this or have used this practice of organizing conversations. How about, how would you rate your level of comfort having organizing conversations related to redistricting in this subject? Okay, I see folks' responses coming in. Have a range of options, easy as pie, find talking about redistricting difficult. Don't even know where to start. So thank you for sharing. So as folks can see, again, a little bit of a range. We have you know, a good portion, 50% of folks say that it's easy as pie. So, you know, we'll be looking for you to share your experiences and making sure that we're all moving forward in this. So thank you so much. And I will turn it over to my friend, Elena.
Great, thank you, Alicia. As mentioned, my name is Elena Langworthy, she, her pronouns. I'm the Deputy Director of State Voices for policy. We, before we get into our organizing conversations, we wanted to just take a quick minute, because I think everyone here on this call is very familiar with redistricting, but we wanted to make sure that folks are aware of the importance between redistricting and how we can use the steps in organizing. Oh, there you go. Great. So we know that the redistricting process can be really technical. And as Alicia mentioned, it really has not been accessible to most communities in the past, either because the meetings are scheduled during work hours, or maybe they aren't well publicized. And we know that outreach can really help to make sure that people are aware of what's going on and the importance of getting involved. It's also really important to note, and I think, again, everyone on this call probably knows this already, but most of the redistricting conversations at the national level, for sure, are centered around the congressional seats, which are important, but there's also the state legislative districts, county seats, school board seats, that will be also going through this process, and may be a more tangible and important thing for people to get involved in during this process. The second thing is that we know that communities have changed in their size and their demographics over the last 10 years. We are patiently awaiting the final apportionment data that should be launched on the legacy format this time next month. But we know that from population data from the Census Bureau, states like Colorado and Florida will be gaining a congressional seat, while others like Pennsylvania will actually be losing a seat. And so it's really important that communities in both of these instances work together to advocate for maps that still reflect their neighborhood and needs. The other thing to think about is that state and local areas are hosting public comment periods over the next 9 months or so. Some have already started, some are still in the planning stages, but throughout education and outreach, groups can really work to create a strong vision of how the district should be drawn and the needs of the communities. Organizing efforts for this include providing public testimony, helping to create community of interest maps, or participating in op-eds or other communication strategies. We have, through the Charge Hub, done a redistricting community college. We had one this past Wednesday, and those are really great if you or maybe members of your group are really new to redistricting. It kind of has a crash course for all of the ways that folks can get involved. And so you can go to the chargehub.org to get more information, and maybe somebody can put that in the chat, or we can share it out after the training. The last thing is that obviously for our campaigns, we want to grow more leaders and more capacity. And we know that organizing through redistricting can help build an engaged base to continue to take action on electoral or other issue campaigns after redistricting. And so really just building a continuous base and a continuous education campaign that connects redistricting to our elections, to the census work, to all of the issue fights that folks are working on. Next slide. Great. And so before we get into our organizing scripts, we thought it would be helpful to also take a minute and think through what are the effective messages for redistricting. And this is kind of a trick because there's not a lot of message guidance out there on redistricting, but our friends at ASO, Frameshift, and the Funders Redistricting Hub did a small message test earlier this year. Somebody Carolyn says, I want this meme. We can provide the memes. This is all part of the collateral that they've created. They did a message test earlier this year, focused on states in the South. And then through that message testing, they found, as you'll see on the screen, and maybe unsurprising, but there was little understanding from folks on the phrase redistricting. And most folks really associated negatively with that word. It, as the re in the redistricting kind of connotates, it seems from folks' opinions that that's really just something that happens every 10 years. It's something that happens kind of to them, around them, and not necessarily something that they can get involved in. The second thing that they found that was pretty big is that more people are aware of the word gerrymandering, but connecting gerrymandering to redistricting, most folks are not really aware of the connection between the two, how they're linked, or why they're important. The new message suggestions include using phrases like community districting, fair districting, instead of the typical word that we've used for so long, which is redistricting. It is a new phrase, and so I think everyone is trying to get adjusted to it, but where possible, that seems to be a better, more inclusive phrase to use. The second thing is that centering conversations around equity, fairness, and resources seem to motivate and move people a lot more in the message testing than using phrases around politicians or representation. Again, I think this is something kind of inherent that we know people connect more to the things in their community than maybe the representation that they have. But just thinking about that. And then the last thing to highlight is that we know making a difference in some states, especially the southern states, is difficult. People will tell you this when they talk to you. And so one thing that they've noticed is that speaking up and working on redistricting, when you're talking about, the need to get involved, using phrases like there are strength in numbers, and really quantifying how many folks are involved in the effort so far. And then also using achievable outcomes. So maybe your group is already working on litigation, or you already know that something is going to happen, that there can be an outcome if people get involved. And so having those concretes can be really helpful for folks. The last thing before I turn it over to Ria and Julio, we have a video, hopefully, that Ria can play. Maybe at the bottom of the slide. And while she's working on that, I will just give a plug. This group has lots of graphics, GIFs, videos that they put together kind of with this new message frame. And so we can share those in the follow-up resources. I think we might have had some audio issues on that, but since it's only 25 seconds, we can put it in the chat here, and folks can just watch it on their own time, but basically it kind of connects everything that this training I think is really aimed towards, of making sure that our communities speak out and get organized on redistricting. So with that, I will turn it over to Ria and Julio for our organizing conversation.
Actually, I think you had one more slide, Elena, to talk about why we were having a conversation.
Oh, is that? I'm sorry, I did not realize that was my section. Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So my name is Ria Thompson Washington. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a senior manager at the Center for Popular Democracy. My colleague Julio, please introduce yourself.
Hey, this is Julio. Nice to meet you all. And I think I see some faces from the last time, so it's awesome to see you. I always say that you cannot get enough rap training, so this is about repetition. So it's awesome that you're all here. And I worked with Ria in the campaigns department and been doing organizing for a long time. So excited to share the space with you all today.
Thanks, Julio. So Julio and I are going to share or talk with you all about why it's important to have these organizing conversations about community districting or community mapping and the importance of them, and how to activate community members so that they can get involved in the process of redistricting, or whatever language that you're going to use to have these conversations. The first thing is that we're going to talk about essentially a rap. A rap is the conversation that you have. It's basically an organizing script that you use to talk to the folks in your community. And a rap is something that is going to be nearly the same every time you have the conversation, but based on the active listening that you're doing when you're talking to folks, you will be able to use those different pieces to help move. We're consistently saying the same thing when they're having conversations. And yeah, so let's get into what the rap looks like. Julio?
Awesome. So I've been doing this rap training for a long time. And one thing that I tell people is like, this is really like a format for having effective conversations. And it really changes mostly when it comes to like the messaging. So one thing that I heard last time we did this training is like, this might not fit my community. So you should think about this as a structure that you can bring your messaging in, and less of a messaging kind of training. Like your messaging, and you know your community better than I do. Like I live in Puerto Rico, so I'm not gonna know what's happening in Madison, Wisconsin. So you're gonna be able to bring that messaging effectively to your communities. The rap has 5 parts, and it's a fairly simple and kind of, it's a thing that after you do it enough, you're gonna just make it your life. Some organizers say that I'm always organizing them because I'm going through all of these. And we start simply by doing an introduction. Really important to make sure that when we are talking to people, we're telling them who we are, why we're there, and adding some urgency. Then we're going to talk about the story, and really the story is identifying issues. If you want to move people into action, you need to know what moves them. And the best way to think about it is like, I've had tons of conversations where people are like, I have no money or blah, blah, blah. And then you dig a little deeper and suddenly like the person is taking care of their grandmother. And that is the thing that moves them into action. So being able to get the story, to ask questions, and to be able to identify effectively what are the things that move people, what are the things that people care about deeply. Then we're going to go into agitation, which really means that we are going to go from like asking questions that are about understanding the person's story to actually kind of like questioning that story and questioning that moment, and actually telling people like what is happening here, and is it fair? Are the things that are happening in your life things that should be happening? Like, is redistricting as we see it in this moment a fair process for our communities? And in that moment, you're supposed to kind of get the emotions rolling in a way that's respectful, but also gets people into action. Then we're going to go to the vision, really important, making sure that people know why we're there and why we care about this, So we are part of a movement, and that movement is looking for fairness when it comes to redistricting. And we are trying to do it together because, of course, what we bring is the people power we have to make change. And then finally, the question, there is no organizing conversation that is done if you're not asking people to do something. If not, it's just a conversation. And it's nice, but you know, we are organizers and we need to organize people into action. So those are the 5 parts. One thing that I always ask people, and I'll do it here, the most important lesson and thing to do in this wrap is not to educate. We are not going to tell people everything in their lives, and we're not going to fix people. What we're going to do is we're going to follow the 70-30 rule. So can anybody tell me what is the 70-30 rule? Who is doing 70 and who is doing 30? Some people should know this because they were in the training. Exactly, Susan. So who's doing the listening? Who's doing the 70? The organizer, exactly. So most important thing about the wrap is that the wrap is a moment think about it as you're bringing people into the movement. And when you're asking people to be part of the movement, you're not going to tell them what to do, because if somebody comes to your door and tells them you need to do this, you're going to be like, no, thank you, bye. But if people are caring about the issue and bringing you in, and actually you're listening to what they care about, then you're going to grab them. It's not easy, but it is a proven kind of like way of adding and supporting your issues. So Ria, I think you're gonna do introduction.
Thanks, Julio. So as Julio was saying, there's the pieces of the wrap continue, they don't necessarily change. And so the first introduction needs to be 30 seconds. Your goals are to provide your name and to like let them know what organization you're with, what your objectives are, and start building the urgency. So if I could have a volunteer from our audience today, somebody could go ahead and read this introduction with urgency very quickly. Go ahead and come off mute.
Hi, everyone. This is Ramona. Excuse me. Hi, my name is Ramona Taylor Williams, and I'm an organizer with, excuse me, Mississippi Communities United for Prosperity. May I speak with Abigail? Great. I am here to talk to you about redistricting, which is the process by which our states determine our representation in Congress and why it's so important to get involved. That's why I wanted to stop by and talk to you about what are the things you need in your community. Let's talk.
Thank you. That's perfect, Ramona. Very quickly, you introduced yourself. You with the person. You establish why you're talking to them, and the urgency is in itself because redistricting is a process that, again, many people may not know necessarily about or think they don't know about, but you're going to explain to them why it's important to have this conversation. Julio.
I think this one is yours, Ria.
Oh, yay. Oh, it is true. Great. So part 2 is the story. When you're trying to identify the issues, it is important for you to ask in the chat, go ahead and drop some questions that you think that you can use to identify what folks' issues are around redistricting. And so that would be like, how long have you been in the city? What type of work do you do? What improvements would you like to see in your city? There was one thing you could change about your community. What would that be? Go ahead and drop some answers in the chat. Let me know what your questions are. What do you think are good questions to to this. And the reason that you're asking questions again is so that you can hear folks, you can answer, you can figure out what their needs are based on what they tell you when you're listening to what they're saying. So the exercise that you should be doing now is dropping questions in the chat about what you would ask to identify what someone's issues are when you're having a question about redistricting. Like, for example, you might ask somebody, what school does their kids go to? What school district do they live in? Do they know like who is in, like what's in their neighborhood? What's the demographic makeup of their neighborhood? Is there a grocery store in walking distance? Is there a corner store in walking distance? Yeah, well, like Peter is saying, what would you like to see changed? Sailor is asking what has changed in your community. Questions about, like, do you know who represents you in Congress or in the state legislature? Right. So I'm going to pass it to Julio to talk about agitation.
Awesome, thank you, Ria. And one thing I usually tell people that haven't done organizing before is, like, there's never enough questions. You want to get deep into what the issues are. So you want to make sure that you are not feeling afraid of actually having a conversation that might take a little while, but it's important. Remember, if you're not able to get and identify those issues, and Ria, can you go to the last slide? It's gonna be difficult for you to actually move the person into action. So that is, and it's also gonna be difficult to agitate the person. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And remember, there's kind of 3 things that people care about in their lives, and they're fairly easy to remember. Like COVID showed us perfectly what those 3 things are. It's family, it's money, and it's health. And if you think about the questions and when you're doing it and you're remembering, like, what are the things, that's going to help you identify the issue. And you're going to have to identify the issues because the next part, the agitation, if you can move the slide, Ria, please. It's really about moving people into action. Moving people into action really is like the notion of this, that there is no movement with emotion. Like, if you don't feel excited about the issue, you're not going to move. Like, this is not like the thing you have to do every day. Like, we are asking you to take another step to do something out of your comfort zone. So usually I'm going to tell you kind of like 3 ways in which I usually kind of like help people agitate others. The first one is very, very easy. Repeat what people say. Literally, like, in many cases, if you're having a conversation in a neighborhood about redistricting, it's because there's an issue with that issue, like with that neighborhood about redistricting already, because people have been disenfranchised, because there's been issues with representation. So they're going to tell you that when they're telling you their story. And what you want to do is literally repeat what they're saying. If you repeat what they're saying, people will listen and people will self-identify the issues they're seeing in their life. Very important and very easy. Repeat. Now, if you do the first thing and you want to make it even stronger, there's 2 things you can do. The first one is about fairness. Fairness is about the present. So anytime you repeat something, so I was talking to Ria, and Ria was telling me that she lives in Georgia, and she hasn't been able to, like, there hasn't been effective, like, resources coming into her neighborhood. Her schools are not great, and her congressman doesn't give a shit about her. And she's saying that because she's mad. And I can say, well, you just told me all of these things. Is that fair? Simple. Is that fair? Make people think about the moment and make people think about the fairness of what they're living in right now, which is why fairness is about the present. And then the second thing that you can do, and I want to make sure that we do it in a way that's cautious, is talk about what would happen if anything changed. So maybe I'm talking to Ria and Ria's telling me she has a special needs child, for example, and that special needs child needs their school in their community to be open because she needs to kind of walk there and then go to school. But she's also saying that it seems like her congressman or her representative is saying they want to close the school to save some money. So one way in which you can say, it's like, one, you can say, is that fair? Is that fair that they're closing the school that's supporting your family? But then the other thing you can say is like, what would happen if that happened? Like, what would happen if your child with special needs would actually like unable to go to a school where they support it? The thing here is like, we want to do it in a way that's not traumatic. So we want to be very respectful to people, and we want to listen, we want to repeat, and then do it in a way where people are like, fuck no, like, sorry for the French, but you know, usually people get mad at this moment, and if they start yelling at you and swearing a little bit, that's all usually a good sign. So the last thing you want to do when you're doing agitation is, beyond making people really mad, they're like, oh, this is bullshit, blah, blah, blah. You want to make sure that they understand who is to blame. You want to make people understand like kind of who is the target. So you're going to ask them, you're going to be like, who are the people that hold power? Like, who are the people that are doing this? Like, why is your congressional member doing this? So that finally, if you're doing a good job, they're going to be like, we need to do something. Like, this is the moment, we need to do something. And you know that if you say, we need to do something, you got them. Because now they're going into understanding the issue to actually going into emotion. So remember, like, there are questions about fairness, just repeat, ask, is that fair? If there are issues that you think if they would change, it would affect the person more, you can actually say that, like, what would happen if this happened? And then like some key questions, like, do you think you have power? Do you think your community has power? Like, based on what you're saying, do you feel like you have a voice in the decisions? And the hope is that finally they'll be like, no, and we need to do something. And if they say that, you did a great job. And then we go into the vision, which I think is it mine also? I think so. Yes, it's fine. So we went to the wrap. Ria, we did a strong introduction. We got them to tell us their issue. They're really mad. They're like, fuck this. We need to do something. We need to go to the streets. We need to do whatever. And finally, you're going to do something that's very important. You're going to share the vision. You're going to share why you're there. Like, why am I here knocking on your door? And why you're there is because you're part of a community of people that is also mad, and they also want change. So you want to share that. You want to share like that moment of change that you want in your community. And you want to make sure, like I was saying, to bring them into the community of change. And that community of change can be Center for Popular Democracy. It could be the League of Women Voters. It could be the Ohio Women for Redistricting Change. There is no group like that. I just made it up. Whatever, like whatever group you're working with that's making that change. Is there anybody that can read this vision part for me, please? It's a little bit long, but it's important.
You just told me that you wanted a new shopping center in your community. We know that these are hard times, and we need the right people to represent us to ensure that we have a voice in the decisions that are being made. Redistricting determines who will represent our community in Congress. This process is led by our legislature, who will determine how our state draws the maps of representation. Done well, this will mean that people like us will be able to have more power. Done badly, it can mean that we lose important representation in Congress. The good thing is that we are not alone. We're connected to many people in the community that have the same concerns, and we are ready to come together to support each other and demand a fair and equitable redistricting process. We have a choice. We can stay home and let others make decisions. We can show up together and demand the resources that our community needs and deserves. Can we count on you to work with us to make sure that redistricting results in a process that ensures fair representation for our community?
That was awesome. I am sold. One thing that, thank you very much. I don't know who read it, but it was very good. like you need to get your flow into this. Like this is not set. Like I want to make this 100% clear. Like you don't need to do it like you're reading something. This has to come from the heart. Like you're gonna listen to this person, and the person, like, you know, the gentleman said, like, you know, they're mad about the situation with the shopping center. You add that, you bring the person's issue to the table, and then you talk about how we're coming together. And then what you do in the end is really what we call in organizing framing the choice. And it's very simple. Like you can keep complaining in your house and be mad at the world, and like, you know, there's gonna be a bunch of probably like white food dudes who are gonna make decisions for you, or you can actually like stand up, organize with the people that are talking to you, and figure out what to do. And you know, in some cases it's gonna be small, but it's better to be in kind of like the moment and try to do something that let others make decisions. And that is the choice. And if people are like, yeah, I wanna do something, I'm ready, then you are ready to ask the question, which is Ria. And you're in mute, Ria.
Sorry, trying to get off mute and move these slides. I'm not built for it. Okay, so as Julio said, once you have gone through the vision, once you have laid out, you know, you've gotten them agitated and you've laid out the vision, the next step is getting folks involved in the plan. So you call them into the question, is what it's called. So you show up, folks need to like, you ask them to be a part of what it is that you're doing, make them feel like they can participate, invite them to the phone bank, invite them to make a post or share a post on social media. The way that folks get involved in organizing, each step leads to the next step. And so you're just gonna help frame the choices like, okay, the shopping center is something that is really bothering you. It's something that you need in your community. What are we gonna do to make this help? You know, what are we going to do to make this help happen? The way that we can make this happen is we're having a phone bank on Tuesday. Can you come out? Can you invite, you know, your friends to come out and phone bank with us? Or when we're going out into the streets to knock on our neighbors' doors. It's getting people involved and letting them know that their process is really just participating, and like from beginning to participate, that will grow into other types of longer commitments and more engagement for folks. And so this is again just getting people to try to participate in the process in the way that works for them. So next I'm gonna hand it off to my role play and have from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Ria. So I think Alicia and I are now going to do a quick demo of what it looks like to put all the parts together. I know we've been going through section by section, but we're going to do a quick role play of the wrap itself kind of in action. And as we go through this, first, it's been a while since I've had an organizing conversation. And I'm bad at having hypothetical conversations. So keep that in mind. The other things that would be great to put in the chat, if you can pull out what points were conveyed during the conversation, if the person being organized was successfully moved to action, overall, what went well, what could be improved. I think everyone is constantly learning. And then if there's additional questions that might have been helpful to ask in this conversation. So with that, we can go into our conversation. Alicia, I think I'm gonna be the organizer and you're gonna be the organizee. The person being organized.
Yeah, come organize me.
Great. Awesome. So hi, my name is Elena and I'm an organizer with State Voices. Can I speak with Alicia?
Hi, yes, this is Alicia.
Great. So, sorry, I was thinking about if this was a phone or a door conversation, and just so we're clear for everyone, I think this is a phone conversation. A little bit different than maybe in the doors. Great, so I am here to talk with you about community districting, which will determine our community resources, our political representation for the next decade, 10 years. It's important that our community gets involved now, which is why I'm here talking with you. So
Wow.
Just curious, how long have you lived in this neighborhood?
Yeah, so I mean, I've lived in this particular neighborhood for 7 years, but my family has been close by and around for probably like 30.
Wow, that is a really long time for your family to be in this area. That's great. Are there things in the community that you would like to see improved, or things that might need more resources?
Well, one thing that I'll say, you know, with my job and taking my kids places, I have a car and the roads are nuts. There's potholes like every block. If there's not potholes, there's maybe it looks like they're doing construction. These things aren't getting fixed. I can't tell you how many times I've popped a tire, and it's that really has been frustrating me. But you know, we still, there are a lot of things here that we do really like as well.
Yeah, the roads are horrible. I live in this area as well, and so many potholes. I wonder, you know, when they're going to be fixed. But what you said, you mentioned you have a job that you're constantly traveling around the community for. What do you do for work?
Yeah, so I am a community health educator. So I talk to people. I provide risk reduction counseling for people living with HIV. So it requires me to go check in on people. I have one-on-one meetings with them, things like that. It's like I do house visits and stuff. So I'm kind of traveling all over.
Wow, that sounds like a really impactful job. Did you have any challenges during COVID with the pandemic?
I mean, yeah, like thankfully, you know, most of my family has been safe and healthy, but with this job, I couldn't see my clients in person anymore. I kind of, it was really tough because some people I know lost their access to care, and even we have one of our hospitals who like normally is supporting these other things was just so overwhelmed and couldn't take you know, couldn't take our clients and meet their needs, and that led to a lot of overwhelming things on our end. It was pretty devastating.
Yeah, that seems like that could be a real challenge for your job and for just the community itself. I'm curious if you think that the community right now, our neighborhood, is really getting the resources that we need to thrive. I know you mentioned the hospital challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess when you put it that way, these are just like things that I feel like happen and we live with. They're certainly really frustrating, but they do make our lives harder, and would be great to have the roads fixed and more hospitals, but I don't really know even what to do about that. So
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. Well, it's been great talking with you. And you told me now that it would be great to see the roads fixed, which I totally agree. And maybe some, better infrastructure or support for the hospitals, which I think if COVID has shown us anything, like that's really important to make sure that our hospitals are staffed. We know that these are hard times. They're tough with the COVID outbreaks, the economic conditions with what they are. And we know that people need the resources and the right people to represent us to ensure that our community has what we need. Community districting really determines our resources and the political representation that we get for the next 10 years for our neighborhood. And I know, it's congressional, but it's also really local, like our city council or school boards, things that, determine how the roads are going to be dealt with in the next 10 years. There's been some politicians that have divided us into districts and serve their political interests instead of the community's needs. But we want to join together and work as a neighborhood to speak out for fair districts, to make our community the best it can be with the roads and the hospitals and deliver just really what we need for the next decade. We are working together, like I said, and we have a plan to support each other and demand our fair resources in this redistricting process. So we do have a choice. We can allow others to make these decisions about community districting, or we can all show up and demand the resources and representation that we need. And so, Alicia, I am curious if we can count on you to work with us and make sure that the community districting process results in our fair resources and representation for this community.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't really think that there was much I could do about these issues, but I feel excited to be part of a network of folks that provides me a way to participate. So you can count on me.
1,000%. So it is really important that we all show up and make our voices heard. And we do have many folks in this neighborhood that are getting involved in redistricting and talking with our local government, because as you mentioned, like the infrastructure is out of control, the hospitals need more money, and we really need to work together. So our campaign actually is hosting an event on Saturday at 3 p.m. To talk more about this. And can I count on you to join us?
Yeah, I'll looking forward to hearing more, and I'll be there. I do have some food on the stove, so I gotta get going, but thanks for reaching out.
Great, awesome. Well, we can reach out to you in the next 24 to 48 hours, a day or two, with more information on the event. And what would be the best time to give you a call back?
You know what? Probably early, like 8 to 9 a.m. Before work.
Okay, great. That sounds good. Well, then we'll make a plan to do that. And Alicia, we look forward to meeting you in person.
Great, thanks. Have a good day.
All right, bye-bye.
So I excited to see people's reactions in the chat before we put you into your own breakout rooms to do work on your own rep. I did want to pull out comment from Carolyn Kaywood. Hey, Carolyn, saying that I think it helps to emphasize that you won't be alone. You'll be supported by a group. Definitely, I know, just like as an individual, that it can feel really overwhelming, but that reassurance that this is being done together is really helpful. any other takeaways, thoughts that folks want to share before put you in breakout rooms?
Hi, this is Ramona. I'm interested to know when we are looking at our audience or our target, are we looking in communities at people within our immediate communities, or are we looking at it from an organizational and a program of work perspective, where we are making outreach a part of, redistricting, outreach, and education a part of our campaign or whatever? So I kind of would like to hear a little bit more about how do we select or the audience or whatever. Are we phone banking?
Well, I think that's a great question, Ramona, and it also came up in our last time that we did this. So I think that one of the places to start, kind of the things and questions that you outlined, is really identifying your goals. One of the aspects about this work is, though, kind of thinking about who isn't part of the, like, kind of in this redistricting work, but could and should be. These could be people from your own personal networks, like folks that you see that you go to church with, that you maybe see at the grocery store. Could be, but it could also be like more broader outreach to talking to people kind of for the first time. And I invite others. I know I saw other people unmute, and we do have, I did want to bring in 2 voices from other folks on the call who have been doing this work, and if you have insights that you want to share and how you approach it, but I'll let others add on.
I was just going to unmute and say, Ramona, that's a great question. I think that depends on, like Alicia said, your goals. But one thing to keep in mind is if you're targeting, say, groups in a specific area of the state or a specific part of a city, it's always helpful to have either a staff member or a volunteer or someone with ties to that area, so that it can be a bit more genuine and really like kind of community focused, rather than maybe having somebody from like Georgia call into Mississippi and talk with them about Mississippi issues. It just does not have the same effectiveness. Ria, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that it's important that we remember that many communities don't have access, as I think somebody mentioned earlier in the chat, maybe Carolyn, that it's hard to get people to care about this. And that's one of the reasons that we want to go through each pieces of the RAP, and specifically talking about like pulling out people's issues, about what their concerns about the community, because no matter what, like everybody has some, even if they're like deep down, start organizing, or it would be like the price of milk, a gallon of milk versus, a gallon of gas, right? I think we've all like heard that like comparison made before. And so it's really, you need to pull in as many people as possible. So I agree with going to like with the churches and community groups, but it's also with groups of people that you may not necessarily come into contact with in your regular daily interactions. So it's going to be other faith groups. It's going to be that maybe work in housing. You're going to have to like really try to broaden the swath of people that you reach out to, so that you can get a wider base of people who are participating, because you want that diversity of ideas and of opinion, really. Julio, I don't know if you wanted to chime in on that.
one thing I'll say is, this training is really about having conversations, but there is kind of like a broader question around like, what is your campaign and how do you win in your question? I think that, we have resources around that, so I'm happy to share them. But I think if you want to kind of like build a campaign around redistricting in your community, you have to answer a bunch of questions. Like you have to answer questions about who is your base, like who are the people you're supporting, like what is your issue? We know that it's redistricting, but why is it redistricting? What does you move people? Like what Ria was talking about is like, who are your targets? Not only because you need to understand who are the people that you're targeting to move change, but also who are the people that are going to be supporting that campaign. Like who are like, and within that, then you start thinking about your kind of your tactics. Like, are your tactics about making phone calls? Are they about going to lobby days every day in the legislature? So one thing I'll say is like, that question is a tricky one because we don't know your community, but the community has to go through a process of kind of evaluating what are the levers that they have to make change and to win, literally to win. Because we don't want to have these conversations in a void, like, talking to Ria randomly a day and being like, we need change for redistricting, and I don't have a plan or nobody has a plan, then, it seems futile and a little bit sad. So I'm down to do a training on campaign practices if it's helpful, because it really is about like answering a bunch of questions around like, how do you get the most you can to win the change you need in your community?
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're gonna do some breakouts. Julio, I think if you want to just explain what folks are gonna be doing in the breakout sections, that would be helpful.
Sure. So you all are gonna have a little bit of time. Not sure how much we're giving them, so somebody can answer that question. That would be great. But mostly what we're gonna do is similar to what Elena and Alicia did. We're not experts here, and I have trained a bunch of people, and I remember at a point in my life when I trained them every day on this. It is hard and it takes a lot of practice. So what we want you to do is find a partner that we're gonna find for you. And then look at the wrap that we're gonna share and try to go through the parts. Just very like, and do it as if you were talking to your neighbor. That is the best way to see it. You see your neighbor and like, I want to see how their life is going, what's happening with them. Try to keep it natural, but important. Take it seriously. Like, don't stop. Like, just go through it. And if you fuck it up, you start again. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. We're all friends here. But practice makes perfect. So that's what we're gonna do. How much time do they have?
10 minutes.
Awesome. 10 minutes. Go wrap.
So breakout rooms are open. Folks should be seeing a pop-up on their screen. You could click the join button. I'll bring everybody back at 2:15.
Should I go to a breakout room?
You don't have to. You could just stay.
One thing we should send is the wrap to everybody in their group.
Yeah, it's in the chat. And that everybody can access the chat. When it's sent as a link in like the broadcasted message, people can't click on it. Is the only issue with that. But I'll let folks know that the wrap is. Hey, Shirley, are you able to join a breakout room? Welcome back, Jennifer.
Thanks.
How was your breakout room?
It was pretty good. We were able to run through the script, and I was the organizer and my partner was the organizee. And I think we were able to get through it.
Hey, Carolyn. Welcome back again. Oh, and Gigi, hi. Good to see you. And so folks are trickling back in. I hope that this was a helpful exercise and practice. I think we have everyone back now. We are going to take a couple of minutes to get a little bit of a report back from you all, hear how that exercise went, any questions that arose. You can drop it in the chat, raise a hand. We also have another Mentimeter that I think, I believe if I drop the link in the chat, folks can be able to fill it out. But also, okay, getting a head nod from Ria. And so if you can fill that out, we can get and track responses. So Elena said that Jennifer and I were having a great conversation about schools. I see 2 thumbs up from Jennifer. Any other thoughts that people want to get off mute, share?
I was observing Elena and Jennifer, and I noticed that the first thing that Elena did was she explained the whole purpose of what she was doing and what she was going to be talking about. So that, opened the door to the conversation. One thing Jennifer answered, which I would imagine that everybody would encounter when she was asked, what's most important to you or something like that. I forget how you worded it, but she answered everything. And I think that's an answer that probably gets used a lot. So, we might want to be able to figure out a way to hone, pinpoint more specifically what the person's issue might be. It was done very well in my little breakout, but I did get a chuckle that everything was immediate answers. So,
Yeah, that's interesting. Do folks have a reaction or response to that? Oh, and then Mentimeter.
one thing I'll say is like usually in organizing conversations, it's either you get the person that doesn't care about anything and thinks everything is okay, or you get the person that cares about everything, and those are really hard. And usually the thing that you have to do is like go deeper and remember the three things. It's like it's your health, it's your money, and it's your family. So go through them and don't focus necessarily on restricting, focus on the whole. Like, who is this person you're talking about? Like, what is their life for? One good exercise, if you're starting to do this, is think about the person's day and go through the day and ask questions about that. Like, what happened in the morning, what happened in the afternoon, because that helps you know like where they dropped their skills to school, where they were working, like what were the challenges they presented. So like very, very, very small tips, but that's a thing. Like, ask questions thinking about like, what are the things I do that I can ask this person that helps? And when you do that, it becomes like, yes, it's everything, but it's usually one thing that really people care about. And that's the thing that you can move them on.
So I agree with that. And I just wanted to add to folks, if you go to menti.com, use the code 4302-4607. Your answers will show up on the screen, or you could drop it in the chat. But it is important to ground the conversation, as Julio was saying, and with a check-in, because sometimes people may not be that you want to have with them. If you don't do that check-in, you can like burn the opportunity to talk to them about something that they may actually care about. In our breakout session, I was with Ramona and we were talking about something, and it would just so happen that, you know, you talking about something that we both knew about the city that we were referring to, like, which is the roads, right? Like that helped be an icebreaker about leading into the conversation about what folks would change, what we could do to move, move forward. Again, what did you learn about your rap? What did you find out about? Did you feel nervous? Did it make you feel uncomfortable? Did you feel like you were talking too much and not listening enough? Go ahead and drop it in the chat, or go to menti.com and use the code 4302-4607.
Yeah, one thing that we didn't mention, I think is really important for people to know, is like, you are not gonna get everybody. Like, conversations are hard, and you're gonna get a lot of people that just hang up on you, close the door, don't want to talk. That's fine. You know, if you think about the amount of people that live in the US, it's 300 million people, and in your community, if you lose one, then you go to the next one, and you go to the next one, and you practice. But don't think that you have to get everybody to win, because that's not the way it goes. Like, you're gonna lose a lot, and then you're gonna get awesome people like you that are gonna join these trainings, and then you're gonna have an army of people that are doing awesome stuff.
Okay, so I see we got some answers, some folks responding. I just have one more question for folks. Let me see if I can stop sharing the screen. Share a different screen. This is the day of sharing screens. Let's just do a quick post-training survey. Wrong one. Try it again. I'm just going to do a quick post share. Folks thought about their training. No, doesn't want to come up for me. And that's the wrong one. Okay, so the question is, just drop a word in the chat about whether you feel more prepared, less prepared, or about the same to have organizing conversations about redistricting. The question is, do you feel more prepared, about the same, or less prepared to have these conversations about organizing?
Great, I'm seeing a lot of more prepared in the chat. Thank you all for dropping that in and participating.
Yep. Awesome, and I think there will be after follow-up survey about this training and the other training of you were able to take it and see how it will be helpful and what else you can learn or what other resources you all will need. What questions do folks have before we check out? I see the question is, how do we plan a campaign? That's a great question. I feel like that's another training that we should explore. Lynn, do we have sample transcripts? We do. I think they're included in the resources that you will get with this training, which is the sample scripts. Yep, thanks, Alicia. And restricting and to who to talk to. It's a great question. Are there any other questions that folks have that they didn't get to answer or that wasn't answered by the training? I think this video and all of the resources will. Thank you all. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you all.
Have a great day, all.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.